of. The first one is actually called a bucket. Think of bucket as a container of various objects that you will eventually upload. So a bucket is going to be unique in its name because it's going to be a part of the URL, so it can't be duplicated. So you go ahead and create a bucket, and this is going to be a container for multiple objects that you're going to upload, and these objects could be anything ranging from JPEGs to AVIs to MPEG files to anything that is static. So I have already created a bucket called mods11, and this bucket is currently empty. So how do I go about populating content, populating data inside this? So it's very simple. I have a text file that I have created. Not sure if this is visible, but it has nothing but a simple hello world on it, right? And so let me change this to hello world mods. Okay, so now I'm going to save this file, close it, and upload this into the cloud storage. So now I'm going to navigate to this file and just click on start upload. Hopefully this gets uploaded if my internet connection is still alive. Otherwise this will be a very interactive Q&A session, right? So thankfully, okay, the file is uploaded. Now you notice that the file comes here, and I can also set this to public access. So I'm actually turning this file that I have just uploaded for public access, which means you can essentially access it even from the browser. So now that I made this object available, remember this object could be anything. It could be a file or a zip file or even a JPEG image. Now what I do is I come back to my Android device, which is currently running in the emulator, and here this code will let me browse for existing buckets. So I'm going to click on view buckets, and it's going to take a while. I'm on a very slow internet connection. So now you notice that I'm able to browse exactly the same buckets that you would have seen in the previous browser. So now I'm going to select mods as my bucket, and here on my Android device I get to see cloudfile.txt. Now I select that, and it should open up hello world mods. Okay, this demo could be very trivial, very simple, but it does convey one point very clearly. That is, once you upload data and content to the cloud, it is going to be seamlessly made available across devices. That's one point. The second point is, while I'm using a tool provided by Amazon called Amazon Web Services Management Console, I have written code to essentially access that. So now let's take a closer look at the code that gives you access to S3. So here, for example, if you look at the code, so there are multiple Java source code files here. So here, this is where I'm actually going to call my API, which is based on the mobile SDK, the Android SDK that Amazon Web Services provide, and I'm going to essentially call this from the Android code, and ultimately it's going to populate the controls and the user interface on the mobile devices. So that is almost like an extension to the scenario that I shared yesterday. So that's one thing. The second thing that I want to walk you through is how easy it is to go live with your own server. So I'm really on a countdown now. I have another 5 to 7 minutes. Let's see how long it takes to go live with a server. So now I'm actually logged on to Amazon EC2. So I'm going to launch instance. So once I select this, I can choose from a variety of templates, and these templates are based on various operating systems. I have Amazon's own Linux called Amazon Linux AMI, or Red Hat, SUSE, Microsoft Windows, so on. Now to keep this simple, I'm going to select Amazon's own Linux distribution called Amazon Linux AMI, and this is the configuration that I can choose from. So this is almost like a pre-configured hardware spec. So I'm going to keep this again at an entry level. So I select micro, and I choose an availability zone. Lack of time, I cannot explain what an availability zone is, but if you recap yesterday, I was mentioning that it's a subset of a region, distinct and isolated facility. So let's call this a web server, and let me choose my private key to log on to this instance, and I have a firewall already configured which will give access only to HTTP and SSH ports, and now I go ahead and click on launch. So that's all I need to go through. So once I follow these steps, and essentially requesting Amazon EC2 to create an instance of an existing template, and this template is based on Amazon's Linux AMI. So let me give it some time. So now you'll notice that this web server instance that I'm trying to launch is in pending mode. So currently it says pending. It takes very few seconds, maybe about 40 seconds or less than that, to actually move from pending to running state. And there we go. So now the green icon is an indication that the server is available to us in a running mode. So now this comes with a public DNS name that is going to be the endpoint to access this box, right? So let's grab this and try accessing it in the browser. Okay, now obviously when I access this, it's going to be a 404 because this is a plain vanilla Linux box, does nothing. It has just booted. So now I'm going to launch my command line and quickly log on to this newly created box. Okay, so now I'm going to SSH using my private key as an EC2 user into the newly created box, right? It may take a while because even though the server is up and running, the SSH and the required services are still coming up. So now I have logged on to my just created Linux box. The very first thing that I'm going to do is become a root user. So okay, looks like I'm facing issues with the connectivity again. So now I become a root user. Then I'm going to run a couple of scripts, and these scripts let me just, sorry, I missed the file here. Okay, so now I'm going to run few scripts, and this script is going to quickly install the Apache Web Server MySQL database and the PHP runtime, right? So that shouldn't take more than a few seconds. So once we have that, the next is basically configuring these services. Okay, the server is running, but I'm not able to refresh the console because of the connectivity issues. But essentially at this point, I have just installed the 3 required components to run my LAMP server. So Linux is already set up, and now we are actually installing MySQL, Apache, and PHP. So now the software is getting downloaded. This whole thing is going to be extremely fast because all the packages required to set up, including MySQL, PHP, and so on, are running very close to the EC2 instance. The M repository is located within Amazon's infrastructure, so it's going to be extremely fast. And now, once I have these basic services set up, I'm going to run them, and there we go. So I just ran a script which is going to configure these services, and now when I refresh the same public IP address, you see that I have a web server up and running, right? This whole process of launching the server and going live took less than 5 minutes. So that's the power of infrastructure on demand or flexible resizable compute capacity on the cloud. So you have just experienced what we call as EC2, right? So this is a quick demo that I thought I'll share with you. So coming back to what you can do as mobile developers and game developers is you can leverage some of the services that are very, very useful for developing viral social media applications or even mobile applications. The first thing is obviously you need compute, so it goes back to EC2. So you can host web services and web apps that will that are key to your applications and games. Of course, when you are targeting the global customer base and global audience, you need massively scalable storage and also a mechanism to take it to the end user. So we offer a content delivery network through Amazon CloudFront, and databases are available in 2 flavors: a relational database delivered by MySQL or Oracle on demand, or you can also leverage a NoSQL database, a flavor of NoSQL database called SimpleDB, which is lightweight and highly scalable distributed database. And finally, for messaging, for delivering those messages asynchronously and proactively. You can use what is called as SQS, Simple Queuing Service, and SMS. The good news is today, starting today, we supported delivering messages via SMS for SMS, Simple Notification Services. It's available only in US East, only for US customers, but eventually that's going to be made available to all the customers across all regions. What it really means is the messages that you push via Simple Notification Service can now get delivered to your customers' mobile devices in the form of SMS. It already supports email, it already supports REST endpoints. Now SMS comes into the play as one of the delivery vehicles. So these are some of the services that you can leverage to develop highly viral, scalable social games and also mobile apps. So with that, I quickly conclude my session and I'm open for Q&A. So any questions on cloud, Amazon Web Services, or anything that you have seen here?